Rolex sucks. And I know what you may be thinking. They're probably one of the most prestigious, if not well-known brands of all time. How is Rolex going to quote-unquote suck? Rolex has to be one of the most hyped watch brands of all time. And as a watch brand, they have some absolutely amazing marketing, but watches themselves are lackluster at the moment. What I'm going to be talking about is more modern day Rolex, whether it be with their watches or as a brand as a whole, and why I believe other watch brands deserve more recognition than their Rolex counterpart. First and foremost, when we're talking about Rolex, all of a sudden your mind goes to when I go to an AD, they say they have absolutely zero watches. Now that may be true. When it comes to a lot of their sports models like the Daytona, GMTs, and Submariners, they're not going to have those models in store, especially for somebody who hasn't had any purchase history in the past, because what they may do is just buy the watch and sell it right after. But coming from a watch brand that makes probably around 1 million watches per year, it's really difficult to fathom that they do not have any Rolexes to sell to people. When you see watch dealers in the gray market, the majority of their sharehold has to be in Rolex. They do have a bit of AP and a bit of tech, but the main thing that sells for them is going to be these Rolex pieces. Rolex makes so many watches per year, and the fact that they're selling this scarcity or this wait list to people in the first place is just another form of marketing for them. Of course, as a human being, if you really want something and you're not able to get it, it makes you want it even more. And Rolex sees this as an opportunity for them to capitalize on. What I want people to understand is that these watches go for more than some other watch brands and other watches that are actually even rarer than their Rolex counterpart. And yet they do not hold a premium over a traditional Rolex Datejust, which in my mind as a horology person cannot fathom. Looking at a GMT and looking at a Submariner, they both have a very similar look. Another thing I want to touch on is the fact that Rolexes are very expensive for what they are. At the end of the day, you as a consumer are buying a name. That's the only thing you're buying with the Rolex. And while I do understand that name does obviously hold a lot of prowess, when you're looking at a Seamaster and a Submariner, it's really difficult to fathom why you would spend the extra money on a Submariner versus the Seamaster, when I personally believe that the Omega is made just as well as a Submariner. When I'm looking at these other watch brands and what they're taking out, their innovation within the actual horology scene, they're doing absolutely amazing things. When I look at a brand like Rolex, they are going to stick to more traditional styles. And for me, I wish that Rolex would take out something that's a little bit more on the innovative side. I'm hopeful for more watches with complications similar to Patek or Audemars Piguet. But at the moment, Rolex is not giving us any of that. And until modern day Rolex gives a little more to their consumers, I am probably going to hold off on any modern day Rolex. One thing about Rolex is that they sell status, and anybody with money would be more than willing to buy a Rolex watch. The only thing that bothers me is the fact that when they do purchase these watches, they don't know anything about these watches in the first place. Although it can give you a look of status, could also make you look like someone who doesn't know anything about watches. When I look at modern day Rolexes like a Batman or a Batgirl, I don't personally tell myself that that person may know a whole lot about watches. Versus when I see somebody with a Memovox parking meter, I completely think the opposite way. Or even a traditional Omega Speedmaster, I feel that they personally know a little bit more about horology than the person wearing a Rolex watch. Another thing I'm not the biggest fan about Rolex is their customer service. Now, I'm not saying every single time I go to a Rolex authorized dealer, they have to offer me a watch. But what I am saying is that a lot of these sales reps that are under Rolex name are, in my opinion, a little rude. What I am saying is to treat people kindly and modestly. Now, I do completely understand a lot of the people who are selling watches in the first place are tired of getting the same question. Oh, do you have any Daytonas available? Do you have any GMTs available? Do you have any Submariners available? And while I do feel for those sales reps that just get that question every single day, there are other people who just genuinely want to know more about the brand. Whenever I go into some other boutique, whether it be a Tudor boutique, Omega, Serge Lecoultre, Vacheron Constantin, they always treat people really, really nicely. But when I go into a Rolex authorized dealer, it's about a 50-50 on what you get. Now, I'm not saying every single Rolex authorized dealer that I've been to has given me a bad experience. But what I am saying is that compared to other boutiques that I've been to, treatment is pretty much night and day. When I see these other brands having open case bags and higher end complications, it makes you really think, what is the point of buying a Rolex watch? Another thing about Rolex that I don't personally like is the stigmatism that Rolex has to be one of the most fake watches of all time. Whenever I see a Rolex watch on somebody's wrists, the fact that I have to think in my mind that that watch could possibly be fake is completely opposite of what I get whenever I see somebody with an Omega watch. And although there are Omega fakes out there, whenever I do look at somebody wearing an Omega, I do tend to not think that they are fake compared to somebody wearing a Rolex. And you can say the same thing goes for AP and Patek. But Rolex as a brand does get a lot more of that stigmatism because of the fact that they make so much of them. At the end of the day, buy what you like. But whenever I personally see Rolex, I always see that they do really, really well with their marketing and their branding. But in terms of their watches, they are really, really lackluster at the moment. Thank you so much for watching. And if you end up liking my content, go ahead and give it a subscribe. And I'll talk to you guys later.